Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumey, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the CEO of Big Chicken, Josh Halpern. Josh, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Great, Josh. Thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. Big Chicken franchise. Let's come right out of the gate here and share with the audience, who's the founder of this brand?
Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq.
Shaq
Big
is the
deal.
founder. So interesting. All right. So would you please share with us the origin of this concept? How did Big Chicken get started? Shaq's involvement, how this whole thing came to be?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the stories about Shaquille O'Neal that you sometimes hear, they don't even do the guy justice. He's one of the best people you've ever met. His authenticity is off the charts. Everything he's ever endorsed, there is a really incredible story behind why he chose to endorse it. And, you know, in 2017 and early 2018, his agent is a co-owner in a restaurant group in Vegas. And he looked at his agent and basically said, you know, why have you never done anything with me? Harry Rogers, his agent, said, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, you know how important fried chicken is to me because, you know, when they were kids, Shaquille didn't have a lot of money, military family. We let our military families live right on top of the safety net, right? They don't really fall through, but they're not right. And Mama Lucille would go and buy whole chickens at the beginning of the month because the commissary would discount them. And one night would be the breast, the next night the thighs, the next night the drums, and she'd whip up a couple sides and they'd sit around the table and they'd eat her fried chicken or her barbecue chicken and the sides that she made, and they'd laugh as a family and play as a family, etc. And for Shaquille, that was his childhood. So when all the chicken companies called and said, hey, man, you're on air doing barbecue chicken alert, come be our spokesperson. Shaquille's like, that would sort of be cheating on Mama Lucille. Can't do it. Got to build my own. And Big Chicken was born.
I can only imagine how long has this sort of been, you know, a dream of his. You know, if you think about the process of all the businesses that Shaq has been involved with, he's very well known as being an extremely successful businessman for many, many years, not just a phenomenal Hall of Fame NBA player, but he's known throughout the world, of course. How long has this been going around in Shaq's mind to have this concept?
Yeah, I don't know if doing a fried chicken concept was in his mind longer than 2017 or not. You know, I think he definitely reached a place in his career where he started saying, all right, like, what's the legacy I want to leave that will kind of outlive me? And he started thinking about what ventures could be that legacy. And then the fried chicken concept came up. And, you know, I had known Shaquille and Perry and the rest of the gang for a bunch of years from my time at Anheuser-Busch. And they invited me to come be the CEO in 2021. And I've been with them over 3 years now.
Sweet. So Josh, what makes Big Chicken unique compared to so many other chicken places in the industry?
Well, we're open on Sunday for one. So that's a big comparison.
We are right
yeah, that's a big comparison versus the big guy there, right?
You have fired one over the bow right out of the gate here.
No.
I'm only kidding.
You know, I mean, that I could guarantee you, right? We beat Chick-fil-A at least once a week. Yeah.
Nice.
You know, but the really is, you know, this concept is rooted in big flavor, big fun, big food, right? It's geared to do things that you haven't necessarily seen before, right? So we have a chicken sandwich that has macaroni and cheese and onion straws on top of the chicken sandwich. You're not getting that at the other guys. And then because so many people want to partner with Shaquille and do really cool things with Shaquille, you know, his podcast with Jason Kelsey right before Super Bowl was inside a Big Chicken restaurant, and they're sitting there dipping, you know, crinkle cut fries in a Hellman's mayo of all things, you know, laughing along as they're there. Or, you know, we partnered with Blue Origin to put the first ever franchise in outer space in the next 100 years. And you in our restaurant were actually able to come in if you were a kid and literally draw on a postcard of what a restaurant in outer space could look like. And those postcards are going to outer space. And we'll come back to the kid, return from space. So this notion of how do we take really good food and combine it with really big fun in a way that just doesn't exist in other places is sort of what we're going for.
Yeah. So if I understand it right, we have 42 franchise locations. That includes even places like stadiums, casinos, airports. How many of the locations are in more of the traditional franchise concept, looking like something like in your background?
Yeah, it's about half and half, and the number will actually start to skew more towards brick and mortar restaurants by the end of the year. We're really fortunate. One of our partners, Oakview Group, they brought us into a lot of arenas. The city of Kansas City invited us to come put Big Chicken in Kansas City Airport. Shaquille and I were actually there with the mayor of Kansas City for the opening, which was super fun. We're in a casino in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, just down the block from LSU, where Shaquille played basketball. So, we're growing in sort of a non-traditional way, but you wouldn't expect anything less, I think, from a business owned by Shaq.
So
Yeah.
I'm thinking about my audience here, and while I have a mix of folks that are involved in franchising their concept, emerging founders, I also have a lot of people who are looking to buy a franchise. And of course, I know there's probably people hearing, oh my gosh, there's a business that Shaq is involved with. They could smell the success and probably wanted to be involved. But I would love for you to kind of share early on here in this interview, who is your ideal franchise owner? Are we talking multi-unit, sophisticated franchise owners, or mom and pops that could buy single units? What does the concept look like in terms of who you're trying to attract?
Yeah, no, we like multi-unit, multi-concept operators who are in their business every day, right? We don't want the guys that are like, hey, we've got a restaurant ops director for this city, and we don't really go into our restaurants. We want people that are maniacally focused and are as big of fans of Big Chicken as we are, mainly because of this notion. And Shaquille talks about it one way, I talk about it another, but it gets us to the same place. I believe that in any franchise system, there need to be 4 wins every single day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your guest needs to win every day. Otherwise, what are we doing, right? They need great food, great service. Franchisee needs to win every single day. They need clear, transparent communication. They need a franchisor who has maniacal focus on their unit level economics. And that's our business objective. Maniacal focus. We use the word maniacal deliberately. A maniacal focus on their unit level economics. Suppliers need to win too, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need to be able to showcase their innovation. They need to be able to have good forecasts. They need to be able to have good communication with both the corporate level and the store level. And the franchisor needs to win. And if we could do those 4 things together, we're in really good shape. We find that we could be most successful driving those 4 wins concurrently when it's multi-unit people who have been there before, preferably with experience with some emerging concepts, but folks that are in the business and can tell you exactly what's going on in their business every day.
Yeah. All right. So we're looking for a more sophisticated franchise owner, somebody with that experience. And one thing we need to point out is that Shaquille O'Neal knows a lot about franchising. The man has been a franchisee of over 30 QSR restaurants. And that's
his total's 155 locations of the various things that he's done, whether that be Papa John's, Krispy Kreme, Five Guys, car washes, gyms. The dude loves franchising. In fact, Shaquille keynoted the IFA conference in San Diego. I believe that was 2022.
mm-hmm.
It was a rough day for me. He told the entire audience of thousands of people that they should look me up on LinkedIn and reach out to me to help Big Chicken take a step forward. But he's that passionate about franchising, and for him, part of that legacy needed to be how could he be a great franchisor and how could he create opportunity for franchisees.
That is the brilliance of this brand, because the man's been on the other side.
Oh, no, and he kicks my butt on it every day, right? Tells me all the time, if we're hurting franchisees, we're hurting him. And, that's a really large responsibility to live up to.
Yeah. Well, the man has an incredible brand image, and he has worked on himself and has worked on every part of, every business he's been in, that he's so well respected that I could understand why there's so many people clamoring to open a Big Chicken franchise.
Yeah. I mean, we are pretty selective. We've literally brought into our business less than 1% of the applications that we've got.
I bet.
And it's because not only do you have to have the right business experience, but you need to be able to do things the Shaquille way, and you need to be able to have fun and manage teams with high engagement. And truly be excited and love what you do, right? We're all reflections of this vision of his, and that's pretty awesome responsibility when you think about it.
Yeah. And everybody wants to be part of a winner. They want to
Yeah.
be part of a winning team. They want to be part of a champion. And, Shaq's a Hall of Famer, 4-time world champion. He has success, just oozing out of the man.
No doubt. And I mean, he's so interesting because he's one of the only professional athletes in history whose social media following got younger after he retired, right? So I mean, like my 12-year-old and all of his friends are obsessed with Shaq, and they were before I took this role.
Right.
And it's just because of how he carries himself and kind of what he's about. He's about big fun, and he's about authentically caring for people.
Yeah. So you said, Josh, that he found you because of your connection with Anheuser-Busch, I guess.
I've known him since then. So that restaurant group that his agent owns, they did a restaurant out in Vegas called Beer Park by Budweiser. Perry was the beer park. I was the by Budweiser side of that equation. And Shaquille and Perry actually visited me in the Anheuser-Busch Brewery in 2015. I have photos of Shaquille and I walking the grounds, meeting the Clydesdales, having a full one right out of the tank. We've known each other for a while, and Perry has kept in touch with me through the years. And, when you work with good people and you genuinely enjoy that experience, you want to find ways to work with each other again. And that's pretty much what happened here.
What's been your biggest surprise since being involved in franchising as a fransisor CEO?
How long do we have? It's not one. It's like Family Feud, top 3,000 answers on the board.
Right.
Let's go. I think one of the more interesting learnings that we found was just there's a certain fragility to it, right? Like you can't be complacent in what you do, right? 2022 Q3, every single food cost in the industry rose. Right? Chicken went way up, breading went way up, buns went up, shipping went up, everything went up. And all of a sudden you're like, I no longer have viable unit level economics until I get these things fixed. Right. So then you have to start to work with your suppliers to say, what are alternate specs look like? I'm not willing to take down quality because that's a long-term loss, but how do we get the food cost back down quickly? Right. Labor goes up to $20 plus an hour in California. Guys, like, my labor's out of whack now. How do we get it back down? Right. So then you have to work on tech tools to make that happen. The number one thing that will kill you in a franchising industry, in my mind, is complacency. We're only as good as this 4-week cycle. Right. And you always need to be looking out for what are alternatives? How do you get better? We say it in our board meetings all the time. We have 0 sacred cows except for the franchisee's unit level economics, right? That is ultimately the pulse of the business. So if that means we need to look at alternate suppliers, or if that means we need to look at changing specs, or if that means we need to innovate so we have better mix. But I think any franchisor that's not mindful of that fragility is going to get themselves into a lot of trouble very quick.
Yeah. I love that you said complacency was the number one thing. I think that whether it's an NBA champion, NHL, Stanley Cup winner, World Series champ, or NFL Super Bowl winner would say that the reason why their team didn't repeat was because of complacency.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said in that.
100%. And look, same thing there. The littlest of things change a team. The littlest of things change a franchise system. And then the other thing is, every franchisee has a different reality, right? And you need to you cannot lead to a collective reality, because if you lead to a collective reality, you're going to have some that are really, really happy and some aren't, right? And unfortunately, you don't get to pick which is going to be which,
Yeah.
So you need to meet the franchisee where they stand and the reality that they have and what's going on right now in their business and their unit. And you need to show compassion and grace while at the same time ensuring, that there's compliance in the system. So it's those two things, I think, are the toughest parts of leading a franchise system.
Yeah, it is definitely a balance. The franchisor-franchisee relationship is tough to navigate for some people. And most people that go into franchising are new to franchising. They didn't have that experience. So they're taken back by this whole thing of this balance. It creates challenges for people.
The interesting thing here, though, is this is where coming from the beer business, the way I did set me up for this, because in the beer business, every beer distributor in the United States, it's franchise law. The only difference is the brewer can't terminate a franchisee unless it's like crazy egregiousness, right? And along the same lines, the franchisee isn't going to terminate their franchisor because there's only 2 or 3 players in the marketplace. You would literally be handing to your number one competitor the line. So you're sort of married forever in the beer business,
Okay.
franchisor and franchisee. And if you're married forever and there's no way out, then you really, really need to get very, very focused and dialed in on, okay, what does our communication protocol look like, right? How do we make sure that we stay between the 40s together? How do we make sure we both win together? How do we make sure that when problems arise, because they will arise, there's a safe conduit in order to say, time out, we need to talk, let's huddle up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think working in the alcohol industry prior to this, the QSR chicken industry is really what set me up anyway for this to be the experience it's been so far.
Sure. No wonder you were the right man for the job then.
Went from Budweiser to fried chicken. It's all the same continuum, right?
True. Josh, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the industry?
I think from a franchising industry perspective, people are a little more cautious than they were 3 years ago. As interest rates have risen, as capital's become a little harder to find, people are a little bit more cautious. People are not necessarily building 2, 3, 4 units simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
They're being a little bit more cautious. I think the second one is there's a new kind of focus on tech that wasn't there just a few years ago. In the past, it was, yeah, we do all this tech stuff, right? Now you have franchisees calling saying, I need you to figure out ways to get labor out of my store. I need you to figure out ways to make it easier for me to run my business, et cetera. I think there's a speed component, and I think that there's this notion of tech now truly has to be an enabler. Because at the end of the day, right, if it's occupancy, food, and labor. If those 3 numbers are green, I like your chances of making good 4-wall EBITDA, right? If those numbers are yellow or red, I don't like your chances of making great 4-wall EBITDA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with all the building materials higher than they were a couple of years ago too, if you're not looking at your cost to build, you're going to mess up someone's cash on cash conversion. That's going to slow them down in their development too. It's those 2 numbers, right? This is really a math game. And I think the savvier operators on both the Zor and Z side recognize this is a math game first.
Yeah. Let's surprise some people with how technology plays a role in a chicken franchise.
I mean, it could be from numerous directions. We just launched our first kiosk, for instance, because we wanted to be able to speed up a guest's possible interaction. And we know too that wherever there's a kiosk trades you up 100% of the time. Your worker behind the counter may not, right?
Right.
So kiosk would be an example. We're starting to look at drive-through tech tools as well. My dream would be for someone to enter the drive-through and you get here, welcome to Big Chicken Shack here. Can I take your order? It would be amazing. I've talked to enough drive-through AI companies. I think the tech is really like 18 to 24 months out from being affordable.
Right.
You can do it right now if you don't care about the budget, but we care about the budget, right? So, right. Drive-through AI is going to become a big thing. The aggregation of third-party data, whether that's DoorDash, Uber Eats, et cetera, key thing. Restaurant loyalty. We're so far behind other industries in loyalty, how loyalty progresses. We feel like we're with the best company in that area. We're with a company called Thanks. But I mean, the way Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha look at loyalty is so different. So, in people's mind, it's like, I come in, I get a sandwich, right? But the amount of technology behind that sandwich is phenomenal.
Yeah. By the way, that was a great impression, by the way, of Shaq.
It's the best horrible impression of Shaquille.
I know that you don't love to, talk about how proud you guys are, the numbers of new franchises that are going to be opening. But I think we need to share, though, that the trajectory of Big Chicken is really something to be excited about. You've got, 350 in development. And can you share sort of what the build out looks like or what the scalability looks like for that growth?
Yeah, I mean, look, those are sold units. That doesn't mean they'll open. And that's something that we need to be cognizant of every day. What I prefer to look at is the fact that at the end of 2022, we had 10 open units. The end of 23, we had, 27. Here we are, June 4th of this recording. Mm-hmm. June 4th, we're already at 42, headed towards, call it 65 to 70 by the end of the year. I like that more, right? Where we're doubling every kind of 6 to 9 months, and we have a very engaged group of franchisees. And we have new people coming into the system. We just went international with our first unit in Manchester, England. We're going to be in 2 other countries by the end of this year. Those are the things that get me really excited. The pipeline only makes sense if people open unit 1 and say, man, I love this place. Let's open number 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Right?
Yeah, it's important for the audience to hear this because I think part of my audience are emerging founders, and they hear numbers like that and it gets them excited. But we should also share the other side of it that, Big Chicken is backed by a dream team of partners, right? You have JRS Hospitality and out in Vegas, they're a large Las Vegas based ownership group, right?
Yeah. That R is Perry Rogers. That's Shaquille's agent.
Okay.
Right? And then you have Shaquille, and then we have Authentic Brands Group, who, I mean, half your closet is now ABG.
I was going to say, there's quite a number of brands.
Reebok or Brooks Brothers, or I mean, you name it, it's ABG, and then Oakview Group, right? So we have really good partners here at the helm of this thing, which open up a tremendous amount of doors and opportunity for us to grow, a tremendous amount of opportunity for our franchisees as well.
Yeah. So there's big money behind this. So for the founder that's, bootstrapping this, don't try that at home to try to open 350 locations on a path.
Yeah, no. But look, at the end of the day, and maybe it's because my background is supplier, not restaurant guy. I probably had an ethos here that was different than most, right? And if you're looking to expand your system quickly, you actually have to start from a different place than most people start, because most people are going to start with their vision, and they're going to figure out the food that they like, or the gym equipment that they like, or the class, or whatever. And then they're going to just start going, and they're going to say, hey, if our marketing is kick-ass, we have digital marketing that's kick-ass, and we have, a high school kid putting flyers in windshields, and, we connect with the local penny saver in the local schools, and we can fake it till we make it on the back of marketing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Knowing that because of Shaquille, I was going to have 99 problems no one else has, and 99 things done for me that no one else gets. Mm-hmm. We started from a less sexy place. Our supply chain is currently built like we were a 20-year-old chain. My franchisees would tell you the marketing is where we actually need to progress, right? Mm-hmm. Because for a while we were like, we've got Shaq and we've got sandwiches, like we're good, right? We started with supply chain and tech stack first. So on supply chain, we have a national broadline agreement. We partner directly with the manufacturers because they buy into the growth that we have and the fact that we're honoring our commitments to them. The number of emerging franchisors I've talked to that say, oh yeah, like my restaurant managers at my franchise locations, they have to go to Restaurant Depot like 4 days a week because we don't really have these things figured out yet. And it's, man, then how do you have stabilized food cost?
Right.
You have stabilized the labor cost, right? We started with food cost and labor cost and said, all right, like let's build the model the right way first. We started with the least sexy areas of the business. Mm-hmm. But starting with supply chain gives me the ability to expand where I need to expand.
Yeah, it was the blocking and tackling that you started with first, right? The fundamentals of the business. Yeah. One of the things I used to say when I was starting my brand is any decision that we were making as an organization was, when we were small, it was, can I do this and sustain this when we were at 100 locations or 200 locations? And if the answer was no, then we didn't do it.
Yeah, we're probably a little different. We have it identified. Hey, what works for us at 2 won't work at 20. What works at 20 won't work at 200. Mm-hmm. Let's just be honest with ourselves as to what those things are going to be. Right.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to people, right? There are some people that once something hits 50 or 100 units, they lose their passion because they would identify themselves as builders. Mm-hmm. You have other people that are like, I like enterprise, and there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that's not okay is if you don't accept the consequences, positive and negative, for the behaviors that you're showing. So we try to be very, very candid about this is what's working, this is what isn't. How do you have continuous improvement and evolution each year, not revolution? No one likes pendulum swingers, right?
Right.
But we're very cognizant of, all of it. Certain tech won't get us to 500 stores, but man, it's great right now.
Yeah.
Certain suppliers, certain people, and that's okay.
So suppliers and technology aside, how are you guys going to ensure that your concept can grow without compromising the quality of what Big Chicken's been able to sustain so far.
Yeah, this is where, again, it all starts with supply chain, right? I mean, our culinary team is great. They work directly hand in hand with our chicken suppliers. They go into the test kitchen of our chicken suppliers. We work hand in hand with our breading company. In fact, our breading company is flying out to us in the next couple of weeks. We work hand in hand with PepsiCo, hand in hand with Cisco, right? And that allows us to grow because we're all communicating together. We're not two frat bros started a chicken joint in the test kitchen of the local Cisco Opco, right?
Right.
We treated our food like it was already at enterprise level when we had only 2 units open. And I think that approach was viewed as very bizarre 3 years ago. And now thank God you guys did that, right? So I think that's the key. At the end of the day, if you're working with your suppliers and you understand food and you understand your spec above all else, someone will make you that spec, and your suppliers will want to grow with you. And the folks that put in the time up front, they're going to want to be with you later on, and they're going to want to grow with you and all the good things that come with that.
Yeah. Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on the training and support of the franchisees? Am I going to get a chance to eat some chicken? What does training look like?
Maybe training. Who does training now? we overinvest in training. I mean, Shaquille, basketball guy, training's everything, right? So we bring our owners out to Vegas for a couple of days. We then have GMs come out to Vegas or to one of our certified training stores for 15 days. Mm-hmm. And then we send folks for the first few stores until they have a certified training store. But I think it's 20 days, right? And we're with you equal parts before and after the store opens. And, we overinvest in training, and we send multiple trainers and everything else, because we need to know that when we leave, that store set up for success and that store can grow into a vibrant thing. Like anything, mm-hmm. Every store we train, we learn things about our own training that need to be improved upon, right? And as a result, plans get put into place with key owners, and we go and do that, so that we're always growing.
What would you say is maybe some unique challenges that your franchisees face that you have to address during training or ongoing support?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, and I was in a conversation with someone last week, and they literally said, "Oh, the Field of Dreams effect," right? Oh. And I said, that's actually a great way of putting it, right? Because we definitely have franchisees that have this notion of, we have great food and we have Shaquille, we don't need to do much.
Oh, that's great.
And for us, that I think is the number one challenge is you have advantages. You can't declare victory before you fought the battle, right?
Absolutely.
We have a supply chain running at 98%. That's great. You have assets with Shaquille O'Neal on them. That's great. Our PR is world class. We did over 2 billion media impressions last year as a 27 unit chain. And as a result, whenever we open a door, day one, we have a line. That's great. We're talking about 363 days a year open for the next 10 years, right? You got to put in the work. And that's really what we try to train our GMs on is you got to put in the work. You got to form the relationships in the community. You need to go try to build the catering platform for yourself by getting out to the schools and the car dealerships and the banks and everything. There's work you need to do. You can't just say, great food plus Shaquille, this is a passive investment. It's a competitive chicken restaurant landscape. There are no passive investments.
Oh, Josh, I love that you said that, because at the end of the day, if the service is lousy and the restaurant's dirty, I'm never going back. I don't care who owns it. I don't care how good the food is.
Yeah, well, and the worst part is because I have every guest review come to my phone across every store, which drives me crazy at 3 a.m. when it's still binging on the West Coast. But I read through every one of them, and every so often you get the review that's like, "Hey, Shaq, I went and the food was cold, and I expect more from you." And it's,
oh wow, yeah.
That just sucks. We always need to be recognizing the fact that someone once said to me, every guest interaction and an experience is like an at bat. And the thing is, one bad at bat, like anything, you judge the experience, right? You say, man, that guy struck out looking on a pitch right down the middle.
Right.
He must not be a very good hitter, right? Restaurant, same way, right? If you strike out in that at bat, it gets hard to win them back. And we can try. We have tools that try, like Ovation, which is phenomenal for reputation management. But you want to make sure that you don't have bad at-bats. Doesn't mean you're going to get it right every time, but there's a difference between not getting it right and having a bad at-bat.
Let's show some love to a franchisee or two. You have any franchisee examples that you love to share that maybe exceeded expectations and they achieved a level of success maybe you guys weren't expecting?
We love, and I mean love, our franchisee in Seattle, David and Lori Jones. In fact, they were one of IFA's franchisees of the year. They built their own chain, Blazing Onion, up in Seattle. They decided not to franchise it. They wanted a mom and pop it, but they were a Subway franchisee too. And they said, we really want to diversify, like one more thing. And I remember David, he signed with us before we opened our first franchise unit, and he said, "I just want to let you know." This is as he's signing, right?
Okay.
"I just want to let you know you're going to screw up the first 10 units, and I'm going to be two of them."
Oh my God.
And I look at him and I go, well, why? Why do you want to be two of the first ones if you know we're going to screw up the first 10? And he goes, "Because what you said about partnership and wanting to build this with your franchisees, that's the type of system I want to be in."
Oh yeah.
And David now, he just opened his fourth unit. He has a unit 3 is actually on the campus of a very large Seattle-based tech company whose name I'm not technically supposed to say,
Sure.
but there's really only 2, and this one doesn't do delivery.
Oh, okay. I think I can figure that one out.
Yeah, that random tech company, right?
Yeah.
And then he has the number 1 and 3 highest AUV brick and mortar stores in our system, right? So he's doing a phenomenal job, but more importantly, he's in his stores almost every day, as is his wife, Lori. They're in the stores all the time, and they have no problem calling and giving tough feedback. And that tough feedback is not Zor Z like this. It's,
Right.
"Brother, we love you. That's why we're giving you the feedback we're giving you." And that builds the system. And I think whenever you find franchisees that want to partner with you to build the overall system, that's a very, very precious, special thing.
It is. And franchisees are on the front line and they see things and hear things that we might not.
No doubt. And I mean, they talk to each other about gripes. And I mean, David has no problem calling me and saying, "Not going to tell you who I spoke to, but this is out there. You need to go fix it."
Yeah.
You have that type of relationship.
What's different, and I hope emerging founders are hearing this, is that there's a difference between a franchisee who complains about everything, and then there's something about a franchisee who gives constructive feedback, yet complains, and then actually shares ideas on how to fix it. You take it as a CEO completely different, right?
Well, yeah, because are you complaining to complain, or are you complaining because you care? And really, it's not complaining either.
It's
right?
not. It is not complaining.
It's this particular franchisee, David and Lori Jones. They called me. They said, "Anything you want to pilot, we ask that you consider piloting here first, so we can give you just candid feedback,
Sweet.
right? Honest feedback." 2 of our major tech pilots in the last year started in Seattle, right? And this is where non-traditional and brick and mortar working together. A good chunk of Seattle met us for the first time in our location in Climate Pledge Arena, where we're the number 1 concession stand in Climate Pledge Arena, where the Kraken play. So we already had some built-in demand, and it gave us the ability to do some fun things in the market. But they are super special people, near and dear to my heart.
Is there anything you could share in terms of a franchisee input? Maybe it's from them or somebody else where it led to maybe a change in how the concept was delivered?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's little things. We had franchisees telling us that our French fry that we had, which was an uncoated fry in the beginning, that they were getting a ton of complaints when it was to go because it didn't hold temperature well. Now we have a coated fry. We had people telling us our paper program was over-engineered, and how can we have a more simplified approach to paper? We now have a more simplified approach to paper. So, I really view all feedback as let's talk the way it is, but also I don't really want our franchisees spending money they don't need to spend. And, what I tell them all the time is, if you see savings, let me know what you're seeing, but just know that if I think they're defensible, why I'm asking you to spend. I don't like you spending money you don't need to spend. So if I bring up to you the why, please, recognize that. So we have a milkshake machine that's a little bit more expensive than your average milkshake machine. It also pasteurizes. right? So, you're not cleaning it every day, etc. We now have two machines, so the franchisees that don't want that have an option, but still that notion of, hey, it may cost you more on capital, but it's helping you on labor. It may cost you, all of it kind of plays together.
Cool. Josh, in terms of folks that are maybe looking to be part of the franchise, would you be willing to share maybe what's some of the due diligence advice that you give to people when they're looking to become a franchisee?
Yeah, I think the key thing is you got to follow the math first, right? Whether someone has an item 19 or doesn't have an item 19 really doesn't matter. Get with other franchisees, ask them what their food cost is running, ask them what their labor cost is running, right? You really need to understand the most important reason why AUV is important, quite honestly, is so you could understand your occupancy costs and your labor costs, because there's a percentage of revenue. But if those three numbers are working for you, odds are you have a decent concept. And if those three numbers aren't working, you need to understand what that franchisor has planned to fix it, quite honestly.
Sure. Okay, great. Well, look, if someone was interested in learning more about the franchise opportunity, Josh, where would they go?
Yeah, bigchicken.com/franchise-information. And fill in the form, and our franchising team will get back to you. Or on LinkedIn, hit up Sam Stanovich. I'm tired of everyone putting my name as everyone that someone should hit. Love Sammy. Sammy's our head of franchising. But realistically, like anything, right? There are people out there trying to figure out what they want to franchise. There's definitely a system for you. It may or may not be Big Chicken, and that's okay. And the same in reverse, right?
Yep.
These things are really like 10 and 20-year marriages when you think about it, right? So you really need to do the due diligence. And then the final piece of it is, and people always skip this one because they get so excited about the math, you really need to look at your franchisee. Franchisee needs to look at the franchisor and say, is this someone I really want to break bread with for the next 10 to 20 years? Because if the answer is no, this thing is doomed from the start, right? And we've all been, right? Frank, I gotta believe when you were a franchisor, right? You would have the franchisees where you would see the number pop up and you'd be like, guy's an energy vampire, man. Like, I just can't, right? Yeah,
true.
And over time, you're like, we're not going to bring that type in, right? And same with the franchisor side, right? We get franchisees calling us saying, hey, your guy over here, I just can't, right? Well, that's a bigger problem, especially when 1, 2, 3, 4 people feel the same way. So this business is people and math. When it all boils down to it, this business is people and math. If you love the people and the math works, rock and roll. And if you don't love the people and don't love the math, nothing else is going to work.
I think that's great feedback for any business, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh, I always kind of finish up every podcast episode with what I call the tip jar, because the franchise community is so generous. You've been so generous with tips and strategies. Is there maybe a piece of advice, though, you'd give to an entrepreneur about franchising their concept before they dive into franchising? Is there something that you'd recommend they do?
First off, read the book Founderology by Kathleen Wood, right? Or the Aubrey Daniels book about being your best self. And, it's weird to say, hey, read these 2 books, but I'll tell you why you need to read these 2 books, right? All of us have in our mind, this is what we want our business to be. And as a result, we start to exhibit behaviors based on that. And those behaviors come with consequences, both positive and negative. What Founderology taught me was, when you're working with founders, and, you mentioned a couple times, Frank, emerging founder. Founder's mind, you're saying, I built this cool business. This business is my Mona Lisa. And now you're going to bring on franchisees who are going to tell you, I could get the equipment cheaper. I could get the food cheaper, right? I don't like your labor model. I don't want to send people in for training. And the founder is going to say, but it's my Mona Lisa. You bought into me, you bought into the system, not to the founder, right? So you have some folks who are like, look, I built a franchising system. And you have others that say, I built a restaurant system, a gym system, a hotel system. The ones that built the franchising system and truly built a franchising system, thought about the consequences and everything else, you're going to go down a very different path in this thing than if you felt you built a restaurant chain and your way of growing is to get franchisees rather than raise the capital for you to do all the units yourself. And now here you have these 20 franchisees telling you why they're not going to embrace your high-end fill in the blank ingredient, and to you that's the secret recipe ingredient, and you want them to, and it just keeps going on, and there's this crazy tension, and that crazy tension starts with the fact you didn't really understand the consequences of what you were doing. So if you're going to start franchising, take a beat, right? Get with some folks, have some conversations, read the 2 books I just mentioned, make sure you understand what behaviors you're about to exhibit, the consequences that are going to come as a result of them. Because once that FDD is filed, it's a new game.
It is. Wow, Josh, that is great advice. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I've been a big fan of Shaquille O'Neal. I'm a new fan of you, Josh. I think you are the right man for the job, and I can't wait to be a fan of Big Chicken. When is a location opening in Tampa?
Man, we're actually at the IMG Academy, about 40 minutes south of Tampa, but Tampa, it's on our roadmap. We hope to get a franchise location open there really darn quick.
All right, Josh. Well, you've got a customer already, so I will be there. Thank you so much again for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.